we're in Siman Yud Sif Yud Aleph. Okay, Sif Yud Aleph. We're discussing a type of garment which is similar to a scarf. We're not going to call it a scarf because we're going to see it hasn't got the same uses as a scarf. Something similar to a scarf, which they wore in Eretz Yisrael called a shid, and in Spain it was called a buka, right? And they would put it around the neck, right? So it's placed in the same place of the body as a scarf, but we're going to see it has slightly different use to a scarf, right? And it says that the Shulchan Aruch says it's potter. Shulchan Aruch says it's potter. One doesn't put tzitzis on it, even though it has 4 corners. It doesn't have tzitzis. One doesn't put tzitzis on it. The Mishnah Berurah mentioned that it's big enough to be chayv with tzitzis. It has the minimum shear. It's big enough, and even so, one doesn't put tzitzis on it, right? And now we're just trying to work out why. Why is it potter? So we're looking at the Biur Halacha Divrei Maskil Sutta 3 lines from the bottom, and he's bringing from the Beis Yosef. Right, the Beis Yosef written by Rabbi Yosef Karo, has been published on the Torah. The Mishnah Berurah is bringing from the Beis Yosef the different reasons why. Why is it potter? We've just seen the first reason. The first reason is that the main purpose of it was to cover the head and to keep the head warm or to protect it from the sun. That was the main reason. And as we saw in the previous Seif in Sif Yud, a garment which is made mostly to cover the head is potter. We discussed in Sif Yud something a kafir like the Arabs wear, which is a head covering. Even if it was to go all the way down the back and cover most of the body and have 4 corners, it's potter from tzitzis because it's predominantly a head covering, and therefore it's potter. Head covering is not chayv from tzitzis. So too this suddah, which was used to cover the neck, seeing as the main purpose of it was to cover the head and not the neck, therefore it's potter. That's the first reason given in the Beis Yosef. Now we're going to continue to see the second reason. We're now on the bottom line of the page of Odei Shlomo. The second reason brought in the Beis Yosef. She'ikru havo'as hasudorim ahem hu lehishtamesh bohem lekama dvorim. Lachko bohem kushe'oisim shum avodas maso lekanech bohem es yadayim v'lisor bohem ma'ois u'lohavi bohem peirus u'lekanech hazeh v'chula. Says that the main purpose of these sudorim was to transport things. He would wrap things in it to carry them. They would use it to dry their hands, to put money inside, to put fruit in, to wipe off sweat. It had many different uses other than a beged. So even though one does have benefit, it does keep one's warm and protect one from the rain. That's not the main purpose why one's wearing them. Right? This is the second reason given. Both reasons are saying that its main purpose is not as a garment to cover one's body. The first reason is the main purpose is to cover one's head. The second reason is its main purpose, even if it is used to cover one's body, but the main purpose is to carry things and other uses. ולפי זה נראה במקומנו שנספשת מחודש גם כן להעלות כמין חתיכה גדולה של עם אביוס על הכספיים. Says the Biur Halacha, according to this, in the places where we live, where again it's become common to put a piece of beged, a piece of garment, a large piece of garment, more than an amma, on one's shoulders, and it doesn't have either of these two reasons. It's not used mainly as a head covering. We don't use it to carry things. Right? It's used just to cover one's neck. So the Biur Halacha says that it should be chayv tzitzis. According to these two reasons don't apply, and therefore the garment that in the time of Mishnah Berurah that we used to cover one's neck would be chayv in tzitzis, which sounds similar to a scarf. Right? It sounds like he's talking about a scarf. Right. However, the Biur Halacha says there are other reasons given in Beis Yosef. One of them has to be worn and not just that it's put on you. Right? Or if one only wears it for as honor and not to keep one warm, which wouldn't apply to a scarf, right? The Biur Halacha is saying that this beged that he's talking about was worn as a choshev beged, rather than to keep one's warm. A scarf is made to keep one's warm, so this reason also wouldn't apply. הרבה חולקים על אלו הטעמים, גובר בייסי של הגמיש, על כן יביא שמיים יעשה קרן אחד עגולו. So the Bir Halacha says that if one has a scarf, which is more than the minimum shear, we're going to see there's a machlokes what the minimum shear is. We'll talk about it when we get to the Shulchan Aruch. If one has a scarf which is more than the minimum shear, a very large scarf, the Mishabur says that Yirei Shamayim should round off one of the corners, because even though the Shulchan Aruch says here that suda that one puts around one's neck is potter. There are 4 different reasons we've seen given in the Beis Yosef why a scarf is potter, and 3 of them don't apply to a scarf. Right? 3 of them don't apply to a scarf. Right? The reason that it's mostly used as a head covering, it doesn't apply to a scarf. The reason that it's used mostly to wrap things up and carry them doesn't apply to a scarf. The reason that it's just a beggar, it's just for kovod and it's not really to keep you warm. The point of a beggar is to keep you warm. A scarf is to keep you warm, like a beggar. It's not like the other reason given, which is that this was something there just for kovod. That also doesn't apply. The only reason it does apply is this reason of derech levisha v'lo ha'alor, which also we haven't defined it exactly. What's called levisha, what's called wearing, and what's called something that's just sitting on you and not really being worn. And one would also have to define. It's not clear if the scarf is really called being worn or not. We'd have to define that better. So it's really not clear that a scarf should be potter for any of these reasons. And therefore, if it's more than the minimum shear, a Yirei Shamayim should round them off. Okay?
The fact that a scarf, we're not sure what something being worn is exactly defined as.
Right.
But if you're wearing it like a scarf, it's a suffix that, whether that's called levisha, is that what creates the problem when people put a talis around their neck as like a scarf?
Right.
Because then they're wearing it like a scarf, and
Right.
that might not be called wearing.
Right, correct. Well, yeah, 100%.
But does it also raise the question, if you're not wearing it, but it's on you on Shabbos, are you carrying it?
Right, that's an interesting question. Is it called carrying on Shabbos?
Well, carrying on Shabbos isn't about wearing; it's about having a purpose.
No, it is about wearing. If you
Like
don't wear your gloves on Shabbos and you carry them in your pocket, then you're carrying.
But a woman
If you're not
with a
wearing
brooch,
your scarf,
I don't know if we'd say she's wearing the brooch, but she's certainly not carrying.
Right.
It's a decoration to her clothes.
Right, it's called the tachshit. Right.
Right.
It's a tachshit.
So it could, although we wouldn't wear a scarf
Well,
as
it
a
fits into the
tachshit,
category of tachshit. Right. Right. It's definitely true what you're saying. That it's not the same hagdorah. There's a hagdorah for with this halacha of wearing and not derech halacha is not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same definition as for Shabbos. It's not the same definition. Like you're saying, tachshitim is not called. Yeah, it's a good example.
it's not called wearing, but it's also not carrying.
Right.
but for instance, people who are not holding by an erev,
Right.
wear their talis to shul on Shabbos.
Okay, but talis is probably being worn.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
discussing it, right.
In that situation, we call that wearing.
Right.
But we're saying that a scarf doesn't need tzitzit because one of the reasons is we're not wearing it.
Right.
So if we're not wearing it, what are we doing with it?
It's on you, but you're not wearing it. It says derech levisha v'lo derech halo. It has to be that it's being worn.
You know, one of the examples. Sorry.
Yeah.
One of the examples that you gave was specifically an example about a garment that's actually used for carrying.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's why we don't call it wearing. Right? So such a garment, it seems to me, you couldn't wear. You couldn't have on you on Shabbos if its purpose is for carrying. And that's why there were 3 reasons you gave.
Yes,
right?
yes.
One reason was that one of the garments, right, that they wore, although it might have looked like a beged, its purpose was for carrying things.
Right.
So consequently, it's pater.
Right.
Right? We're not called wearing it, right? So if you have that on Shabbos,
I think that would be okay to wear that on Shabbos.
what?
I think you could wear that on Shabbos. That's why I think the definitions are different here. I think on Shabbos you'd be able to wear it. As long as it also can be worn as a garment, and you are now actually wearing it as a garment in the Rishus HaRabim.
Then doesn't it require tzitzit?
Then even though it doesn't require tzitzit, because the main purpose of the garment was to carry things. But seeing as it can also be used as a garment, and now you're currently using it as a garment, so you can now go out with it into Rishus HaRabim.
It's just not mechuyev and tzitzis.
Oh, I see what you're saying is because the majority of time that it's used is
Right.
not for a garment.
Therefore, it's
Right.
not mechuyev. But
Not
since
necessarily the
you
majority of
can
time,
use it as a
but
garment-
the main purpose, we're saying. It doesn't go by time. The main purpose of it is not as a garment,
Right.
whereas with Shabbos, it definitely depends on what you're doing now with it, rather than what its main purpose is.
Right. That seems to be the difference.
Right.
Because if right now you're wearing it as a garment, then you're good.
So there are a number of differences. And that's something I wanted to read you from this sefer here. I'm just now having difficulty finding it. Just give me a moment.
Which sefer is it?
This sefer is called Piskei Tshuvos.
Uh-huh.
Piskei Tshuvos. This one I wanted. So he writes here. So we said according to what the Biur Halacha says, it sounds like with a scarf you should round off the corner if it's a large scarf. So he writes here in the Piskei Tshuvos. This is written by someone called Rabbi Novitz. He lives in Yerushalayim. I think that's his name, Rabbi Novitz. Lives in Yerushalayim. He wrote. He's alive nowadays. Lives in Yerushalayim. He wrote on the whole of Orach Chaim, on every chelik of the Mishnah Berurah. He wrote a sefer which brings the different opinions of the poskim after the Mishnah Berurah, and also brings some of the Achronim before. He discusses contemporary issues. It's become a classic.
In his lifetime.
In his lifetime, yeah, it's very true. So he writes here. He writes the following. Our scarves are mostly to warm the body rather than for kavod. Generally, they haven't got a big enough shear to be mechayiv in tzitzis. Though there are plenty of big scarves nowadays that have got the correct shear. He says even if it is big enough, even if it is the right shear, and generally one wears it when it's folded over, and all four corners are in front of him. Right? It's very common to wear a scarf with all four corners in front. Therefore one doesn't need to round off in one of the corners. But he says if the general way is for you to wear it when it's opened up and it covers a part of your back and chest, and two corners are in front and two and two at the side or at the back, then one should round it off. Right? So he says that one doesn't need to unless it's the big enough shear and one wears it in a way that you have two corners at the back and two at the front. He also says that only if it covers part of your chest and part of your back. But it's not clear where he gets that from. The Biur Halacha didn't mention that anywhere.
We didn't get to the shear yet, right?
No, we haven't talked about the shear.
Okay. Is the shear square dimensions, like square meters, or is it length?
There's a minimum length and minimum width. Right?
I see.
Right.
Okay.
But it doesn't have to be square. If the length is much longer, there'd also be okay. As long as
No, what I mean is a square inches or a square meters.
Oh no!
Is it measured in?
It's given as a length and a width, not
So
as
it
an area.
So it has to be both a minimum length and minimum width.
Yes.
But it sounds like what he's saying is the way we tend to wear scarves